A commonly asked question when using Machine Control Studio software is, how do I read and/or write to one of the digital inputs or outputs on an SiIO module? In this video, I'll show you how to do that. So if you're ready, let's get started. The equipment that I'm using today is Connect Software version 2.11.3, Machine Control Studio software version 1.09.04. I'm using a Commander C300 drive, and I've installed an SiIO module into the expansion slot on the Commander C300. Let's have a look now at how to set up the SiIO module using Connect software. I'm going to begin by showing you how to map the function of the digital inputs and outputs on the SiIO module to parameters that can be accessed using Machine Control Studio software. I've already started a new Connect software project, and I've uploaded the existing drive parameters into my project drive in the software. I'm connected to the drive, so all the changes that I will make need to be saved to the drive when I'm finished. Let's have a look at the dashboard for the SiIO module. I'll click on the Parameter Listings button on the dashboard to have a look at the parameters I'll need to change. I'll begin in Menu 1. The digital terminals on the SiIO module are configured in this menu. I'm specifically interested in parameters 11 through 18 in this menu. Notice that terminals T2 through T5 can serve as either digital inputs or digital outputs. Since there aren't any digital outputs configured by default, I'll make terminal T2 a digital output by dropping down the list in the Value column and changing it to a digital output like this. Terminals T7 through T9 on the module can be either digital inputs or analog inputs. Terminal T11 can also be an analog output. I want to make terminal T7 into a digital input, so I'll drop down the list and change the function of this terminal to a digital input. Now I'll open Menu 2 on the SiIO module. Parameters 1 through 8 in this menu can be used to determine the state of the terminals on the SiIO module, but I'm most interested in parameters 21 through 28, as here is where I can map terminal T2, our digital output, and terminal T7, our digital input, to parameters that Machine Control Studio can read and write to. I'll start with parameter 21. I'm going to assign an application menu parameter from menu 18 to this terminal. But before I do that, let's have a look at menu 18 so you can see what I'm talking about. Menus 18 and 20 contain generic parameters that can be used as variables in a Machine Control Studio program. The variables in these menus are of different data types. Notice that menu 18 parameter 1 is a power down save integer, and parameter 2 is a read-only integer. As I scroll down this menu, you'll see that parameters starting with parameter 31 are read-write bit variables. In Machine Control Studio software, it is important to correctly define variables by using their data type. Since we want to read and write to digital terminals on the SiIO module, I must assign one of these bit variables to terminals T2 and T7. Let's go back to menu 2 on the SiIO module and assign parameters from menu 18 to terminals 2 and 7. Terminal T2 is the digital output, so I'll assign parameter 1831 as its source, like this. Terminal T7 is the digital input, so I'll assign parameter 1832 to that terminal. That is all I need to do using Connect software. So I'll save the parameters in the drive by clicking on this icon from the control ribbon. Before I disconnect from the drive, I'll upload the drive parameters into my project drive like this. The SiIO module is now configured, so we're ready to move on to Machine Control Studio next. Now that the SiIO module has been configured, let's see how to access those two control terminals using Machine Control Studio software. I have the software open, so let's start a new project. I'm going to open the Drives template folder and then choose the Commander folder. Inside this folder, I'll click on the Commander C300 as my target device. I'm going to leave the task setting at its default setting of freewheeling, and I'm going to be using the ladder editor to create the code for my project. So I'll choose that from the language drop-down like this. I'll click OK, and the software will build my project for me. I'm going to open the freewheeling POU by double-clicking on it. Here is the Machine Control Studio ladder editor. The first thing I'm going to do is to add a contact to my first rung. This contact will be used to determine if terminal T7 on the SiIO module is on or off. Recall that terminal T7 is our digital input, and I assigned drive parameter 1832 to that terminal as its source. I'll click on the question marks above the contact, and then I'll click on the ellipse button to open the Input Assistant. I'm looking for menu 18 parameter 32 to assign to this contact. That is found by expanding the CT General Purpose Library like this. I'll expand the column width a little so you can see more clearly. Notice all of the labels that are preceded with an M. That is how drive menus are grouped in this library. I'll move down to M18 for menu 18 and expand it. Parameter 32 is referenced using the P032 label. Here it is. I'll double-click on it to assign this variable to the contact in my program. Now I'll add a coil to this network by clicking on the Insert button and then choosing a coil from the toolbar. Since this coil will indicate whether or not terminal T7 is on or off, I'll create a new user variable by clicking on the question marks above the coil and typing the variable name T7 underscore state. When I press the Enter button on my keyboard, the software opens the Auto Declare editor. The Auto Declare editor is used to declare variables. Remember how I pointed out how important data types are in Machine Control Studio? And here is why. The default data type for a coil is a Boolean data type, which is what we want. So I won't need to make any changes here. I'll click on the OK button to close the Auto Declare editor. Here's the network that will allow me to read the state of terminal T7 on the SiIO module. Next, I'll insert another network by right-clicking in the white space and then choosing Insert Network. This network will be used to access terminal T2, which is a digital output. I'll begin by adding a contact. And I'll use the same procedure as before to assign a user variable to it that I can force on to activate my digital output on terminal T2. I'll call the variable test_T2, and I'll leave the rest of the settings in this dialog box at their default values. I'll complete this network by adding a coil. I'll then click on the question marks above the coil, and instead of using the Input Assistant to locate menu 18, parameter 31, I'll just type it in directly like this. There. I now have a program that demonstrates how to read and write to digital terminals on the SiIO module using Machine Control Studio software. I'll build the program to check for errors. There are no errors, so this program is ready to download to the drive. Thank you for watching, and thank you for choosing Control Techniques.